Hello and welcome. Banjo, I want to welcome Banjo Obayomi to our Juneteenth conference. Banjo is a senior research engineer at 26 Labs, where he develops platform solutions for productizing various research-based products. Banjo is passionate about operationalizing data, aka DataOps, which I am a big fan, and has started a podcast and meetup around data. So, Banjo, thank you for joining our Juneteenth conference. And I just want to give you the platform to talk about a data centric blogging platform.
Thank you for that introduction. Hey guys, this is the last talk of the day, so thanks for sticking through. So I'm going to tell you about my journey of how I built this data-centric blogging platform I'm calling Grimoire. So before that, a little bit about myself. I am a software engineer at 26 Labs, which does cool AI and cybersecurity work for government as a government contractor. And because of that, I like data so much. So as mentioned, I started a podcast about data called the DataOps podcast, talk with people about how they utilize data to create value for their customers. And then I also run a meetup called DataOps DC, where it's local to the DC area and people come talk about what they're doing with data. So anyway, I kind of came about this thing when I was thinking, what exactly is a blog? A lot of people write blogs or articles that just they use words and images to convey their thoughts. When it comes to data, the data science, one of the big problems is a lot of these articles have static images of their analysis, or it's really hard to kind of look at the data in an interactive way. You see a static image, you can't really interact with it. It's just right there. Here's a graph. They made it somewhere else and then uploaded it as an image. So this is a problem I was running into. So as a developer, when you run into a problem, you want to kind of find a solution to overcome that. And that's how a lot of applications are built. A personal problem that somebody is experiencing and they want to help fix that. So in my case, it was having an interactive blog experience. As data science becomes more popular, big data is everywhere, and people are starting to write article posts about them. You really need a way to have the users integrate with that data in a better way than just looking at a static image. So that was my problem. So I developed a platform I call Grimoire. So what Grimoire is a blogging platform that allows technical bloggers to have more than just static images and words to describe their I guess, ideas. And just to kind of show what it is, this is the site. You can click on one of the images, and it's pretty cool. You can embed regular images, but then you have all these other things, like you can embed data frames directly into the blog, scroll through it, highlight different values. Oops. Always problem with running things live. You never know what's going to break. But you can have highlight over. So this is a chart with a iris data set. So you can kind of look at what all the values are. There are different ways to look at data directly, but just embedding the data directly into the websites. APIs are there, maps are there. So it's pretty cool that you can just import data, and it kind of looks like you have basically a markdown text that just random text that it renders into a nice, beautiful interactive site where you can kind of look at the data directly. So I like that aspect where you can just have markdown text that provides a beautiful blogging interface where people can interact with data. So some cooler examples. So Washington Post actually updates kind of a data set of police shootings. So I found it interesting that they just put it on GitHub. It's just there, but it's kind of hard to really interact with. So using Grimoire, can kind of see here are all the police shootings that happened since 2015 to 2020. And it's pretty cool that you can kind of just look at the data in a different way. So for example, here, I'm going to change it to state and race. And you can kind of see what all the police shootings throughout each state. And what's cool about it, it updates in real time, so you can kind of see what's happening. The latest one, Georgia, Richard Brooks. It's just a way to look at the data in a better way to kind of see what is happening. So I really like the interactability of a platform like this. So how was it built? So it's cool that I can do all these things, but I want to kind of inspire people to build their own application. So I want to walk through some of the things I use to actually build this platform. So there's a lot of pieces, obviously. The front end is the API and is actually the blog layer. So I'm going to kind of break down each of these layers to get a better sense of how somebody would go about building their own platform or building their own application. All these tools make it very easy for even beginners to get started with something and put it out on the internet where people can look at it and test it themselves. So starting with the front end, I used a framework called Ionic. So what Ionic allows you to do is allows you to choose a specific language or framework. So a lot of people like React, AngularJS, or plain HTML, CSS. So using that, you can build something called a progressive web application. And what that is, it allows the application to look the same on mobile, desktop, tablet, whatever. And it has the same app functionality. So if somebody wanted to make like an iOS app or an Android app, the progressive web application built by Ionic has some of those things that a native application would have, like access to a camera or shaking. And it's really cool because you can write the code base once and deploy it to many different systems. So I really like the Ionic framework because it gives you a choice. If you're a React developer or an Angular developer, you can use this framework to just build an application and have one code base and push it to many different things. And then in order to actually deploy this, that people can utilize it, I used a framework called Netlify. So what Netlify does, it allows you to easily, as soon as you update your GitHub repo, push it to the main branch, it can actually build your application and push it live. And it kind of handles a lot of the complexities of like making sure your cache is clear or changing the DNS. So it's really cool because you can actually buy domains directly in Netlify. So you can actually don't have to worry about any of the annoying things. Everybody ever try to make their own website and like go to like GoDaddy or DigitalOcean and try to get their own website? There are a lot of complexities involved. Netlify kind of takes that away. You just need a domain. You can have a GitHub repo and it'll build your code and push it. And it also just allows you to do many other type of builds like NPM, Yarn, Ionic. So I really like the ability to pick your flavor and then have this Netlify kind of manage that entire front-end deployment process. So you can easily have your app running in the web, accessible by anybody with an internet connection. So coming from the front end, the API layer is also important. So this is how the application actually talks to the endpoints. So I used a framework called serverless. So what serverless does, it's a cloud agnostic API development platform where you can, so I used Python, but you can use whatever you're familiar with, and you can develop an application right through there and then configure a YAML file, and it will actually push it to the cloud. So it could be an Amazon, Google, Microsoft, whatever cloud provider you use for. It'll actually create all the API endpoints for you and push it in a serverless fashion. So when I say serverless, that means you're not controlling the underlying server. You're just paying for how much compute is used, and it's very little with these serverless platforms. So, for example, I think Amazon's like 3 million requests free each month, and most of these starter apps aren't really going to hit that kind of bandwidth. So I really like the ability to just develop your API locally and then have serverless push it to the cloud and let other applications connect to it. So it's a very easy way to bootstrap applications people are developing, and people can test it out very quickly. So I mentioned that it's cloud agnostic. I used AWS. I'm more familiar with that, but it sets in the back end. It sets up all the API endpoints, all your function logic, and you can create like DynamoDB, which is Amazon's database store. So all that markdown text that is in my blog, in a blog post, is actually stored in this DynamoDB, which is a key value store. So serverless really sets that up automatically itself. So you don't really have to worry about underlying pinins. You just edit a YAML file, which they have a lot of tutorials on how to use that. And you can have a complete serverless application that has database, API layers, and even front end if you needed to. So I really like these abilities to bootstrap something, because as a developer, especially if you're starting out trying to learn something, you want to show yourself to people to connect it. And these tools like this just make it very easily to kind of scale something up, and you don't have to worry about underlying infrastructure. So serverless first mentality is a lot of the time when you want to build an application. So I really like these services just to get something out there, test it, get feedback, and able to just not worry about all the underlying infrastructure that a normal project would use. So the blog layer is the most complicated one. So it's not even completely working, as we saw earlier. There's some bugs still in it. But the idea is that once the serverless layer is up there, you need something to actually show this blog. So what I'm using a new application called Streamlet. So Streamlet is an open source framework built for machine learning and data science teams that can take Markdown or Python code and turn it into an actual application. So the blog that's actually being displayed is actually being produced by Streamlet. So Streamlet's really cool because it has all these cool interactive capabilities. So you saw drop down, you saw maps, you saw data tables. Streamlet has APIs built into it where you can actually just utilize these things pretty easily. And I was able to find a way to convert Markdown into Streamlet code. So it's so you don't have to worry about the code underlying. You just have to write Markdown, which is pretty standard, and then they'll generate the code for the blog. So I thought this was a really cool use case because Streamlet is very easy to use, still new, very beta, so not all the features are there completely. But I think as it grows, this platform will also grow with it. So I'm very excited about where Streamlet's going and what kind of interactive modules can be embedded into a Streamlet application. So Streamlet application actually is not serverless, so I have to host it on a physical server. So that actually costs some money because it's running 24/7. But you can put that behind a load balancer. So the idea behind a load balancer is that it will actually, I can have multiple instances up and running, and then one endpoint to kind of just redirect the traffic to that actual Streamlet application that needs to be served at the time. So hopefully when more people come, I'll be able to add more instances. The load balancer can handle that. But this was the most costly part of this project, especially if you're starting off something, you need an instance that's running 24/7. A lot of cloud providers offer a free tier, but once people start utilizing the application, a free tier won't be enough. But it's a good way to bootstrap something, test something out, putting it in the cloud. So really taking advantage of all the cloud services and all the power they have, you can really bootstrap an entire application and put it out and develop it as needed. So after building an application, you got to really think about what are the future steps. So my initial problem was I wanted something that I can have more interactivity with a blog post, but it doesn't stop there. As a developer, you always say, what can I do next? What's the best thing? How can I develop my application further? So you always got to think about your application is never done. There's always going to be something up. So I'm thinking about what am I going to do with my application next? So I mentioned Streamlet before. It supports all these different type of interactions, scalar and machine learning, Altair, the visual library. So there's so many different things you can embed into a Streamlet application and make it easier for bloggers that want to actually show I want to highlight machine learning on my application. Can we embed that without having to worry about code? So there's all sorts of things that I can do that add to the Streamlet application that can be also added to the blog. So there's this endless of possibilities, but I need a kind of feedback from users what's more useful. So I'm ready to start building out new applications as soon as I can understand what are the end goals for bloggers that want to write on this platform. Native upload. So right now you have to put a CSV file directly to where you want the data to be shown, but some people might want to upload their own data and not want to host it somewhere. So that's another thing I'm thinking about. How would I easily handle that? Can I store that in the cloud as well? How would that work? So got to think about the complexities of having users upload their own stuff. It could be a virus. It will be too big files. So a lot of logic behind that, but it's something on my mind for future upgrades. And then influencers. Like I said, this is a platform built for data professionals that want to express their work more than the static images and text. So people that like to blog about data, highlight something, show an API. I really want this platform to be for the community that wants to kind of highlight their cool data project they're working on. So these are some resources that I've used. So Streamlet, Grimoire, the actual blog, serverless to deploy the API, Netlify for the front end, Ionic for building the front end, and my Twitter if you have any questions. So I hope this was helpful. I know there's a lot of information, but these just give you an idea of how you can actually build an application to scale it up, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Banjo. So first off, thank you so much for sharing this. I think what was super interesting was that I know that there are a lot of developers out there that have an open source idea, and it's very, very overwhelming. You know, where do I get started? How do I get started? So I really loved how you kind of walked us through, you know, your process. Like, why did you select certain technologies? How did you, you know, you talked a lot about how you were bootstrapping some things, and so that was super, super, super helpful. So we got a lot of great feedback. So I know you talked a lot about some of the programming framework and tools you built, but one question we had was around some of the tools that you use or will be using to make this more of an interactive website. So if you could share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Streamlet is a brand new application that's, I think it's about almost not even a year old, but basically what that allows you to do is have a Python script and add interactive components to that. So you can add sliders, you can have graphs, you can have buttons that do things. So Streamlet is the framework that allows for that interactive capability. So we saw the graph that was a heat map that was generated. There's a Python code behind that that's actually generating that heat map. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to actually write the code on the back end and then look at a markdown file and see, okay, I want a graph that's using this CSV file of these options, like in a JSON object. It's putting all the attributes, and based on those attributes, I can render that graph there. So basically, I have code in the back end that's reading like a JSON object with all the attributes I want for that graph and then rendering that in real time.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm super excited to hear your talk, because I've actually been on a couple of machine learning projects myself over the last year, and I'm more of a backend engineer, but I work with a ton of data scientists who are very used to kind of living and breathing in Jupyter notebooks. So maybe I know Streamlit is pretty new, but maybe talk about, you know, what are some ways maybe as a data scientist you might go from taking the work that you do in a Jupyter notebook or something like that and moving that into Streamlit, or if that kind of feature is available.
Yeah, so a lot of the times data scientists work in Jupyter notebooks, but it's kind of hard to highlight their applications like in an actual app form. And most of the time, Jupyter notebooks are just going through a bunch of steps. What Streamlit allows you to do is just take those steps and make it into an actual usable application. So if I want to run my model and again some input, there's actually interactive, like I could put text boxes if I'm trying to do some kind of NLP, put your text in here, press a button, and then my model will run in the background and show an output. So it's basically giving data scientists ability to be app developers by having this single page application that's taking all the hard machine learning or data science expertise and putting it in a tangible app format that people can actually utilize and test right away instead of going through a Jupyter notebook.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, I wish I had known about this before during a couple of my projects that we've been working on. So one of the things I think I really loved is that you're creating, we talked a lot yesterday in some of our sessions around getting more Black people to contribute and be part of the open source community. So you've got a project, and I know, and I'm in DC too. And actually, I've been, I think I've been to, hey, DC in the house. So I think we probably know a lot of the same people, but I would love to get the word out more about this open source project. So maybe share a little bit about what, how people can contribute and what you're looking for.
Yeah, so I actually want to meet up DataOps DC. The next meetup is June 30th, so DC people. It'll be virtual, so anybody can join really. But so Streamlet is still kind of new, so there are some active development going on. If you go to a GitHub repo, and people can kind of go in and see the issues. They actually want beta testers because they want to make new features. So there are ways to kind of get in. It's harder for new projects because it's like so much things is going on, and the people that are developed, the core team has kind of their own roadmap. But people are welcome to make suggestions, and they kind of look at that and prioritize that. But as for Grimoire, that's a blogging platform that people can utilize now. So I'm looking for feedback to test it out. And I don't know. I'm sure there are bugs in it. It's still pretty new. Streamlet's still pretty new, but someone has written a blog post and tested some things out, so it was very helpful feedback. So I think people just interacting with the system, testing things out is the best way. And then there's a feedback channel. So Twitter, GitHub, there's just ways to just interact and just make people aware of these kind of things. So I think the best way to really contribute is just go to the site, try something, make a comment, reach out to somebody on Twitter, because that's how people get recognized, noticed, and they'll take action based on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and I'm super excited because I personally would love to contribute to Grimoire. I think you mentioned already a couple of things around uploading data. How could we streamline that a little bit better? So I'm definitely interested in helping contribute any way that I can. So we will definitely connect after this. And there you go. This is like the beauty of this conference. I personally loved it because I've been connecting with so many Black people who are in tech, who are killing it, and that really representing, the technical, strong, deep technical skill set that a lot of people say, hey, we don't know where to find conference speakers who have deep technical, who can do deep technical talks. Banjo just killed it.
I love to talk. So yeah, if you have need any tech people, I got you.
Yes, yes. So why don't you talk a little bit, especially in the DC area, or just talk a little bit about your journey as a data scientist, and talk about some of the things for that, because I think I know we have a lot of people who are interested in getting into that work, and so talk a little bit about your journey there.
Sure. Yeah. So I started as a software engineer coming out of college. I did a computer science background. So I had a traditional background in computer science, but I kind of went into doing this Java development. I don't know if Java is still popular now, but people probably still use it a lot. But I was basically a Java developer, but I had always an itch on like building things. Like I learned a lot because I found problems I was running into, and I was curious about building applications. So my day-to-day work, I was doing something else, but then when I'll come home, I'm always curious about what can I learn more, what can I build, and what really helped me kind of this full stack experience was building mobile apps. So I was really interested in like how can I make an app and then put it on the iPhone, because I had this kind of cool iPhone. I was like, oh, I want to make apps. So learning how to make apps kind of helped me understand the full software development cycle. So I know I need a front end app, I need an API, I need a database. So kind of connecting all these pieces together kind of gave me a better view of like how can I actually build something and where the pain points in each of those steps. So I always say find a problem that you care about, you're interested in, because then you're going to be wanting to see, okay, how can I move on to the next part? So for me in this project, it was like, oh, I want to make interactive blog posts. So how would I even get started with that? So, oh, there's this cool Streamlet application that allows you to do interactive things. How can I embed that in a blog way? So for me, it's always finding a problem that you care about and then kind of learning the pieces together. It's not going to be perfect the first time, but if this is the problem you care about, you're kind of just going to go ahead. What can I do to fix this? What's the next pain point? How can I get past that? So coming from a traditional background, just always liking to explore and find my own applications. That's really how I learned how to build bigger, better apps from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. I think we've had some really recurring themes throughout this conference. One, intact, that you're always a lifelong learner. I know for me, I'm always literally every single day, most weekends, I contribute time to getting on, learning new technology. Technology's changing every day. And then I think the other thing that we covered, and that's been a recurring thing that I love, has been start with something that you're passionate about. Start with solving a problem that really impacts you, impacts your community, and that is really the way that you want to learn and grow your technical skill set. So, Banjo, thank you so much for sharing your blogging platform with us. I'm ready to contribute, so we will definitely be connecting.
Yes.
And so from Banjo and I, thank you so much. And we're wrapping up the Juneteenth conference. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.